and welcome back to BSB Must Reads, where we tell you all the books you must be reading. Today, I have with me author Lyn Hemphill. Hi, Lyn.
Hi.
And you're going to be talking about your new book out November, Drifting. Tell us a little bit about Drifting.
So it's basically my Xena warrior princess style mermaid gets thrown out onto dry land and turned into a human basically, and she falls in love with a human woman as she's attempting to get back into the ocean. And so she's all a bit torn over, I really do want to get home, but I also kind of want to stay on Earth on land now as well. So
that was an awesome summary, except all I could think about was Xena warrior princess mermaid.
Yeah, that's basically Xena warrior princess. The Little Mermaid is the main character, Jet. I think that she's a good combination of those two.
I'm sold already. So you're going to be doing a reading for us. For readers who may not know who you are yet, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, about the senior reading, and then you can start whenever you like.
Okay, so I am a British Kenyan, which basically means that I was Kenyan born and bred and only recently got my British passport, having lived here for half my life. I write books about all sorts of things, usually with a touch of magic in there. So this particular one, in this scene, it's written from the human's point of view, Tessa, and she has already met Jet, but they were both very drunk at the time. So this is their sober meet cute, following on from their very drunken meet cute. Tessa is taking her young nephew, Ben, out to the beach in Whitby for the day, and sees someone that she recognizes across the way. Ben, of course, insisted on crossing the little bridge and running down the planked part of the pier right out to the green signal buoy, as far out to sea as he could get, before they made their way all the way back to the swing bridge and out to the east pier. By the time they got down from the second lighthouse, though, he was definitely beginning to flag. Tessa ruffled his hair. How about we head home and get some dinner? Good idea, he said. He looked out to the last section of the east pier. I've got to go right up to the red buoy, though, or it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be symmetrical, would it? Exactly, he said. It'd feel left out. Go on then, she said, rolling her eyes fondly. Go pet the big red light. As he ran off, something caught Tessa's eye over on the west pier where they'd started. She frowned and squinted a little. That person looked familiar. The girl on the other pier leaned right over the railing, looked into the ocean, then moved a little further up and repeated the action. Tessa frowned and pushed her flyaway hair out of her eyes. She was sure it was the girl from last night, the one who'd rambled about mermaids and sea witches, the one with soft, tangly black hair who'd called her kind and was upset about something. She'd been in cut-offs, but now she was in a long black hippie skirt of some sort and another oversized t-shirt. It might have been the same one. Tessa's blood ran cold as the woman quickly slung her legs over the railing and without another thought leapt into the water. An old couple cried out, words lost to the wind. Tessa rushed to the railing on her own side, her heart a ball of terror at the top of her throat. Ben, stay there, she yelled, and jumped into the water. The cold howled into her, and she barely got her head above water to gulp in air. She caught a glimpse of black hair and a white face and swam, her arms cutting the water, her legs fierce in their battle against the drag on her jeans, her shoes. She tilted her face to gulp in more air, and a wave washed over her, into her lungs, burning. Then there was a strong arm around her chest, hauling her up, dragging her through the waves towards the looming wall of the pier, barnacles and rough stones scraping her hands until they reached a steel ladder set into the wall. She grabbed for the rungs, coughing and spitting. What the hell were you thinking? The woman demanded. Tessa looked up at her furious face. What was I thinking? What were you thinking? You jumped in first. Yes, and why would you come after me? Tessa! Ben screamed. I'm down here, she yelled, and struggled to cling to the ladder with numb fingers as the waves buffeted them up and down. The woman seemed to rise and fall with the waves, one hand on the side of the ladder to keep her in place, while Tessa felt like she had to use all of her strength not to be thrown around. The old couple leaned over the railing, holding Ben back. A small crowd was gathering, everyone else who'd fancied a drizzly walk out to the piers. "Do you want me to call an ambulance?" a young man called down, holding up his phone. "Ambulance?" said the woman. "Yeah," Tessa thumped her on the shoulder, missing as the waves pulled her away, "in case they had to deal with a half-drowned suicidal idiot." "Well, you shouldn't have jumped in after me." "I'm guessing not," the young guy muttered above them, putting his phone away. Tessa paid him no attention, gasping at the woman. "Oh, fuck you, mate. I was trying to stop you from killing yourself." "I wasn't trying to kill myself." "What were you doing?" Ben yelled down. The woman looked very shifty, glancing around the crowd. Tessa narrowed her eyes. "You're not still trying to turn into a mermaid, are you?" Ben gasped and leaned forward far enough that the old couple grabbed his shoulders to pull him back. "You're a mermaid?" "No, of course not," the woman said, forcing a laugh and shooting Tessa a poisonous look. "That would be ridiculous. Look, could you two please get out of the water before you freeze to death, or should I get on and call an ambulance?" Tessa shivered violently and the woman frowned. "You're cold." "Of course I am. It's September in the North Sea." "It's the River Esk, actually," she said thoughtfully. Tessa rolled her eyes and concentrated on climbing, her jeans, hoodie and trainer sending a veritable waterfall behind her. She hoped it landed on the idiot's head. A couple of people helped her over the railing, and the old lady even gave her a towel. "Keep it, love, you'll need it. You staying far from here?" "I live in the town," she said, tugging her hoodie off and wrapping the towel around her shoulders, trying to stop her teeth from chattering. The old man gave his own towel to the not-a-mermaid climbing out behind Tessa. She found herself irrationally angry that the ridiculous skirt didn't seem to be impeding the idiot's legs nearly as much as her own jeans were impeding hers. "Are you sure you're not a mermaid?" Ben asked. "You swam so fast. I thought Tessa was a good swimmer, but you were over to this side like a shark." She gave a crooked grin. "Sorry, kid, mermaids aren't real." She glared at Tessa again. Tessa rolled her eyes and squeezed the worst of the water out of her hoodie. The small crowd they'd drawn was starting to disperse, and she wanted to get home and warm. Even so, there was something weird about this girl, and she knew she'd only worry about her in the middle of the night if she didn't do something. "What's your name?" "Jet," she said. "You?" "I'm Ben," said Ben, who'd clearly found a new hero. Tessa really ought to have been jealous. "This is my Auntie Tessa." "Do you live around here?" Tessa asked. "You're going to need to get out of those wet clothes as soon as you can." Jet nodded. "I've got a beach hut down there." "A beach hut?" she frowned. "Those don't have showers, though." "No, I suppose not." Tessa sighed. "Come back to mine, have a shower." "Why?" Jet gave her a proper side-eye, and Tessa gritted her teeth, offended. "Because you're wet and cold, and I'll worry about you if you don't. Because I still don't know why you jumped into the sea, and I don't believe you weren't trying to..." She glanced at Ben, who blinked up. "Trying to do something silly. Good enough?" "We're going to make tea," Ben said to Jet. "Tessa, can Jet have tea with us?" "I don't know. Will Her Highness deign to have tea with us? Or is that also too suspicious for words?" Jet flushed. "Look, I didn't mean to be ungrateful. I would really appreciate a shower if you don't mind." Tessa's hackles lowered. Of course. She cleared her throat, now feeling a little guilty about her own sharp tongue. "You're also welcome to tea." Jet smiled, and Tessa found herself needing to clear her throat for a whole different reason. She turned stiffly on her heel. "Come on then, let's get going before I freeze here."
Well, as meet cutes go, that one is dramatic.
It's a bit of a roller coaster, I think.
For sure. It's a great banter too. Love it.
Excellent.
Okay, so obvious question first. Why mermaids? I think, in all the like various characters in novels with, kind of like paranormal aspects, mermaids aren't too obvious. So what is it about mermaids that appeal to you?
I think I grew up on the East African coast and spent so much time in the water. I think I feel more comfortable swimming than I do running around on land. So for me, I was pretending to be a mermaid when I was a kid. So, a lot of the imagery that I've used in this book when I'm writing about Jet underwater and fighting underwater and racing to wrecks and so on, that's very much based on my teenage years growing up and fighting with the kids next door in a friendly way.
Of course.
We just also like to throw things at each other.
Don't all kids?
Yes.
That's half my childhood, for sure. So what's the best thing about writing non-human characters?
I think just having so much freedom to really go crazy about thinking what would be alien to them about our world, and also that sort of biology nerdery of, ooh, I wonder what mermaids would really look like, because there's no way they would evolve to look like, you know, Ariel from The Little Mermaid, and biologically it just doesn't work.
That's a shame though, really.
Shame, but my mermaids do get to be warriors, so that's all right. They are a little bit, because this is based in the North Sea, just off of Whitby, which is sort of very northern British, very northern English town. It's very cold water, and the dolphins that I've seen there compared with the dolphins that I've seen in East Africa are generally sort of much chunkier. They're very, very muscular, sort of very thick in comparison with the dolphins in East Africa, which are probably more what people have in mind when they think of dolphins. They're sort of svelte and smooth. My mermaids are sort of like, why are humans so skinny? How do you guys stay warm? What's wrong with you? It's so weird. Don't you use blubber? No.
That's great. I love that you use this kind of obscure fact that only you would know in your novel, and now we've all learned something. So that's awesome. Okay, so you write about kind of coming of age experiences, young people figuring themselves out. That was a lot of those themes in The Willing, and now again in Drifting. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happens in your novel, and why you like that kind of that age range, that period where young people are coming into their adulthood?
I think because I took such a long time to work out who I was, and essentially that period of my life it meant freedom to me, because my childhood was fluctuated between being absolutely brilliant, when I was off with my friends, and then a little bit tense at home and so on. So getting out and getting into sort of my 20s and sort of realizing who I actually was in isolation, or in a little bit more isolation from my family, it was just such an exciting time when you realize that actually there is so much possibility. And I think identity is so important, obviously from a queer point of view, but from my own point of view as well. So just from a nationality point of view, and from sort of deciding who I want to be when I grow up, essentially.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so I think that even though I don't necessarily aim to write coming of age stories, I often end up writing about learning who you are, because I'm trying to find out who I am all the time.
That's a great answer. What are some of the things that Jet and Tessa grapple with when they're trying to figure out who they are, and who each other is too?
I think one of the major things is the fact that Jet always wants to get back home. She was thrown out of the water during a battle. She doesn't know whether her cousin Amber was able to escape from the battle, or whether she was captured by the group of Mer that they were fighting. And so in her mind, everything's very black and white. She's the good guy, the Nar, who are the sort of more north and east tribe, the sort of more Danish tribe. In her mind, they're the bad guys because they were on opposite sides in the war 30 years ago, and that kind of thing. And she has to learn that actually it's nowhere near that simple, that there's a heck of a lot more going on, sort of for the Nar, than she realizes, and it's not as cut and dried and black and white. And she has to get her head around, falling in love with somebody so completely different to her, and somebody who is not part of her people. So it's, I suppose, a little bit of xenophobia that she kind of has to get over. And for Tessa spent her entire life trying to think about how to make it easier for everybody else, and trying to think about she is asked at one point how she feels about a traumatic event that happened in her childhood, and she answers by saying how it affected her big sister and her little sister, and Jet sort of points out gently that, okay, that's how it affects them, but how about you? And so you've got Jet, who thinks she has a very clear identity. She is Fandeepa. She embodies that her clan, and she has to find out that actually everything's not as black and white as she thought it was. Whereas Tessa doesn't really have her own identity. She feels sort of hollow and sort of stuck between her two sisters. And it's, I suppose, trying to navigate that while also remaining kind and loving.
For sure. I think that those two things really complement each other and give them a lot to work out in the novel. So I look forward to reading it. And I hope that you all do too. Drifting by Lyn Hemphill will be out November 1st from the Bold Strokes Books web store, and November 16 everywhere books are sold. Please do check it out. And thank you so much, Lyn.
Thank you.